Okay, so for those who don't know me, I'm Jenny Sime. I'm responsible for the digital leadership and skills portfolio at the Digital Office for Scottish Local Government. So under my remit, obviously look at a number of different interventions in relation to upskilling our workforces across local government, working in partnership with Scottish Government and the Digital Academy, along with the SCVO and others. And one of the other key pillars that we look at is our digital maturity assessment, which looks at how the benchmark in local government and in individual organisations against digital transformation and leadership. It's mostly about capacity for being able to progress with digital initiatives and leadership, and with a strong focus on the skills required for the future workplace as well. So I'll just take you through our model and how that works, along with some of the findings that we've had over the last couple of years. So the digital maturity assessment, as I said, is focused on leadership and skills. So we talk about four things: digital strategy, digital skills and culture, capacity for transformation, and research and innovation. And those areas we see are the key themes that need to be in place in order for organisations to progress on their digital journey. The transformation journey we would see is looking at transformation strategy. It isn't just about having the clear ambitions and vision and investment, but also how actions and governance support those ambitions and vision and investment in order to drive forward with transformation. Key to that also is about customer experience and service design and having a measurable program. And when we say measurable, we're talking around outcomes for citizens and communities as opposed to just the financial benefits. And we'll come on to some of the findings later, but we definitely see that we're better at the financial cashable savings than we are around the measurable programs and outcomes longer term. We look at digital skills and culture, and that's looking at leadership roles, modern organisational cultures, new ways of working, the full spectrum of digital skills. So right the way through from essential digital skills and the offer that I talked about with the Scottish Council for Voluntary Organisations, all the way through to the technical specialist skills under Scottish Government and also Government Digital Office down south, what we would call the DDAT skills, digital data and technology. What we're also looking at is workforce planning and how that would work, and looking at the future workplace, where are the gaps and how we can move along the workforce planning journey, looking at continual learning and how councils can make sure that their staff are constantly dealing with what is a very fast-paced and changing environment within digital. We also look at capacity for transformation, so having the right capabilities to be able to take forward the vision and goals. So things like service design. In Scotland, we call that the Scottish approach to service design, and it's a Scottish government-led design methodology. I'll talk about that a little bit later as well. Looking at consistent methods for transforming. So we don't necessarily say you must do this one thing, but what we do look at is a variety of methods. So agile methodologies, Lean Six Sigma, how that can go into a Prince 2 environment without it being too restrictive in terms of governance and assurance. And then also how collaboration works, and that's across service areas within organisations, but also on an external level as well. So thinking about the digital office ourselves and the wider digital partnership as well up here in Scotland. So how can we get the best out of what is a limited budget and resource pool up here for local government? And then finally, we look at research and innovation, which is about innovation culture and champion. So it's not necessarily about the innovative technologies, although we do talk about that, but it is about how you can adopt a culture around innovation. So failing fast and learning, making sure that people have the opportunities to test things out and put ideas into practice, establishing links with academia and innovation centres. So things like the city deals come into that up here, and how that can tie into other things such as CivTech. I think that's GovTech down south, and also so we've got innovation centres up here. So digital health and care have got DDI, and also Census looking at IoT functionality. And then again, collaboration across councils and the wider public sector to deliver on some of that research and innovation, because it's a very fast-changing world in digital technology, as I mentioned before. So what are the 5 levels of digital maturity that we measure against? So this maturity model was developed by the Digital Office's Chief Technology Officer, Colin Birchinall. It's based on an IT capability framework and also the Gartner Digital Government Maturity Model. And it kind of pulls a lot of different things in from all of that arena, just so that we can have something that we can use to measure local government and how do we apply that. So as you can see it's on this scale of 1 to 5. 1 being an initial ad hoc eGov. So I think this is where certainly 5 years ago, we would have seen where councils were aiming for. So moving things online, job scheduling, capturing data. There wasn't a consistent approach to this, and it tended to be ad hoc. And then moving up the scale, it's things like repeatable online services, much reduction in manual activity, a bit of mobility and an automated job scheduling, so some of the dynamic scheduling, greater transparency through open data. And again, these are things that we probably recognise that some organisations are still on this part of the journey as well. And then things that are repeatable, so things that we can move across from a channel shift perspective, and make that available across the organisation. And then as we move right up to the optimized smart, we're looking at things like data-centric approaches, data-driven service design, systematic corporate-wide approaches to digitization and service design and innovation. So breaking down the silos, it's not just in specific work areas, but it's across a whole organization. Very much putting the customer at the heart. So thinking about the journeys, how that would then tap into wider external organizations as well. And then obviously right up to the smart optimized area, we're looking at things like artificial intelligence, use of IoT, drones, how all of the data that's captured out of all of those can help move from an intervention to a prevention model as well in government. So councils we usually see are on the 1 to 2 scale at the very bottom, and that's absolutely fine. I think that's where we would expect most organisations to be, particularly in a high demand service area like local government and a reducing budget. We've seen the budget reduce continually over the last 10 years. But what I would say is that certainly since March 2020 and COVID pandemic response, we're definitely seeing councils hitting that 3 defined and systematic data-centric approaches, and that is rapidly changing. And so councils have actually rapidly moved through the different levels of maturity, which is fantastic to see. So the maturity model itself and the maturity assessment is carried out at an organisation level. So we spend a lot of time going into councils and speaking to all of their chief officers. That's through the interviews. So it takes about an hour. It is a huge resource intensive opportunity for councils. Usually between 10 and 35 or 40 interviews take place, and at the same time an online questionnaire goes out to wider leadership and management across the council. So the report that's produced on the back of the assessment is very much a thematic qualitative and quantitative analysis. So it takes in a lot of the themes as well as some of the metrics that we look at. And what comes back out of that is a very rich report that's tailored to that organisation that allows them to benchmark where they are and see best practice, shine a spotlight on certain areas of really good practice within their organisation. It also points to areas for opportunities and recommendations to improve. And on the back of the assessment, we spend time with the chief officers, usually through a variety of workshops with the chief execs and the chief leadership team, as well as elected members, to develop an action plan to move forward to try and move up that sliding scale of maturity. What I would also say is that it is very much tailored and private to that organisation. It's not something that we use as a league table in any way. It's supposed to be designed to be a really frank understanding of where the councils are in order to measure, because we understand that digital progress is really tricky to measure, and it's quite hard to kind of get that understanding of where we are because it takes a long time to do the truly transformational things. So this allows us to benchmark and move forward in those different levels of maturity. So as I said, it is an organizational assessment, and it is on an individual basis. But what it also allows the digital office to do is to identify gaps at a national level, to act as a concierge, to point out where there's good practice and help councils who are maybe really great at one thing but not so good at others, and marry them up so that we can get best practice. And in 2019, we produced a national report that kind of looked at where things were across the board. So the key findings from 2019 were that there were clear vision but lack of tangible actions and outcomes. Short-term budget-driven plans were often classed as transformative. So again, that kind of ties into that 1 and 2 level. So we tinker around the edges with some online channel shift activity, but the truly outcome-based, how is that affecting the citizens? How is that having an impact on things like attainment for education or a more preventative model for health and social care? Not so good at. Digital is not the new name for IT, so there has been a big shift in this, that people recognise that it's about the people as much as it is about the technology. Digital leaders are now moving away from directing and to enabling. I think there's still a bit of work to do in this arena, and it's not about how we work, but it's about how we work, but not where we work. And then finally, lack of understanding what digital skills are required, uncertainty over the best way to build capacity for transformation, collaboration inside and outside the council, still work to be done, and innovation has great as yet untapped potential. So that was where we were in 2019. And then we've been lucky enough to be able to still continue with the digital maturity assessments throughout 2020, and have been able to assess where councils are in terms of their post-pandemic responses. So digital transformation has obviously accelerated across local government, and we've definitely seen a huge uptake of digital tools councils already had in place. So a lot of councils already had Microsoft 365, but potentially weren't using it to the best of its ability. Certainly home working and flexible working and mobile working was still very much ad hoc. Some councils were doing it better than others, but there was still very much a focus on the office as the base. Virtual infrastructure, cloud solutions have all increased in pace as well, and in some cases literally overnight. And I think that is definitely a high point and a success of where we were from a foundational perspective before March 2020, that we were able to flick things over at pace. Some councils did need a bit more support, and I think that they've certainly managed to adopt that since March 2020. There's been a huge culture shift, obviously, in the way that we work in local government. Council services have been agile and responsive to user needs, including those of the workforce. So this comes down to some of the levels of governance and assurance that we have in place across local government. And what we've seen is that we had a just get things done approach to a lot of the things that we needed to do in order to support people who were shielding, for example, or those people in the workforce that needed to be able to access solutions and systems at home. And we've definitely been able to focus and prioritize on the actual needs and drop some of the things that we weren't able to do as we were responding. And I think that's been a huge success, and we have to think about how we take that forward into the new world. There's also been increased political engagement in digital transformation. So councils are now holding council meetings and committee meetings online, and many elected members now have access to all the digital tools that they need to have in terms of Teams, for example, or Zoom, or whatever it is that they potentially are using to communicate with themselves and with their citizens. And I think also as well, there's definitely been an opportunity here where elected members have been able to see for themselves the opportunities that digital tools can provide to them and to their citizens, whereas before it was potentially more of an abstract listening to digital teams coming to talk about the opportunities. Now they can really see the benefits of that, and it's been really heartwarming to see that political engagement as well. I've also interviewed a number of elected members as part of recent maturity assessments, and there was definitely a feeling of, we really want to let the experts in relation to digital take things forward. So because they were able to see how quickly things were able to change to this remote working and supporting citizens, there's a trust and confidence that's been built up in digital transformation teams that I think would have taken a number of years, probably 5 to 10, to get that kind of level of confidence amongst elected members and chief officers. So it's absolutely fantastic that we've been able to see that. And again, councils have been directed to respond to customer needs. So things like Connecting Scotland, Helping Hands for Shielding organisations, and the digital telecare initiatives have all focused on keeping the citizen at the heart of service delivery. And all of these things continued from March 2020 right the way through and have actually evolved over the last year. And it has been thinking about what it is that the customers need and designing those services around the customer and making sure that they have all the skills and solutions ready for them. So what next? So obviously a lot has changed and we've accelerated the adoption of digital tools at pace. However, that has also accentuated a number of the previous gaps. So we still have a massive gap in terms of skills of the workforce. And we need to undertake a gap analysis across local government at an organisational level and at a national level to understand what support's required at all levels of the spectrum. We need to look at the tools and kit required for the new ways of working. So although we have seen a great uptake in adoption in these tools and being able to work remotely and overnight, there is also still gaps around frontline workers and having the right kit. So worryingly, the things that I've been seeing as part of the last 12 months maturity assessments is that people like social workers and education teams and other frontline workers are have still not got the kit that they require to do their job in the best way possible for not only themselves but for the citizens. So we need to look at how that works going forward, looking at personas, making sure that they've got the right access to software and hardware, and also have the right skills to be able to work with those things. And there's obviously an increase on the DDAT roles, the digital data and technology roles, and we really still need to grow the capacity across local government in this area. Citizen-centric design, as I mentioned, we have been very responsive to what's required for our communities as a result of the pandemic. However, there's still a lot of work to be done to ensure that all of our service journeys are designed around the user. Even after the COVID response, this is still a gap across local government, having not only the skills within the organisations, but the opportunity to be able to break down silos and governance and other things that have traditionally been barriers to being able to approach service design across organisations. We've trained a number of people in Scotland on the Scottish approach to service design. I think we have around about 70 champions already trained in this change methodology, but we still don't have truly service design journeys happening across local government. We don't seek citizen participation in projects from day one, so we quite often get quite a way down the track, or it's being led by something other than a customer need. We need to really starting from the citizen and working our way back. And we must also build on the methods of exploring problems that remove the service boundaries, collaborating internally as well as externally. So many of our customer journeys, particularly around health and social care, for example, cross multiple service boundaries as well as external service boundaries, and we need to be better at how we can do that. And it's about setting up the right culture and environment so that people can try things out, that we can engage with our citizens and make sure that we're not excluding citizens as we go along that journey as well. And again, in relation to the wider citizens innovation and councils innovation, we have taken huge strides forward in adoption of digital tools. However, we still have an untapped innovation potential. Councils need to have a structured approach to collaboration and innovation, and staff need the space and time to learn, to test and put these ideas into practice, and also to be able to actively collaborate with ourselves at the digital office, other regional partnerships. I mentioned CivTech earlier on, other innovation centres and academia. We do see really good practice starting within the city region deals, but then again tends to be siloed as part of the city region deal. So how do we maximise some of those links and some of those opportunities to really innovate and move things forward at pace? So finally, we have a couple of resources that are available. The maturity assessment, obviously, that's a tool and an approach that we can undertake with the Digital Office. There is a full report from 2019. I'm about to publish a 2021 report, which focuses on where we've been, some of the highlights I've talked about in this session. And we also have our team collaboration page, which has a number of areas for best practice and case studies as well. And I've also highlighted the Audit Scotland report here as well, because we very much see the digital maturity assessment complementing the recommendations as part of the digital progress in local government from Audit Scotland. And my colleagues are going to talk about that in a minute, but also the launch of the digital strategy up here in Scotland as well. So thanks everyone. I'll take questions at the end once Bernie and Lucy finish their discussion. That should be you, Bernie. You should be able to share now, hopefully.
Okay, thanks, Jenny. Hopefully it should just be coming up. There we go. No, thanks very much for that, Jenny. Can you see the presentation okay?
Perfect, Bernie, thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, I think a lot of what we'll have to say this morning will be, kind of complement really well what Jenny's just presented in terms of the kind of digital transformation journey in councils. So this morning we want to talk about the report that we published in mid-January on digital progress in local government. It follows on from other work that we've done on digital in the public sector. Published a report on enabling digital government in 2019, focused on the Scottish Government and its kind of national strategic role. And we've published a whole series of reports on kind of major public sector ICT projects, as well as a principles document. But this report, this is our first report looking at councils in particular, and I think you'll find kind of a lot what we've got to see does complement really well what Jenny's kind of said. So this morning, so I'm just looking to move my slides. I can't. Can you see them okay? Because I can't actually see them on my.
We can see them, but it hasn't moved yet, Bernie.
All right, okay. Can't actually see it. Lucy, I don't know if you can take over presenting, can you?
I'll give it a go. I'll take control.
Right, sorry. Okay.
Okay.
Let's see. So yeah, this morning, just to outline what we're aiming to do, is obviously just kind of want to outline, what the aim of the report was, and sort of go through some of the findings and recommendations we made for councils, and then highlight some of the resources that sit alongside the report. So the overall aim of the report, it was about helping councils to improve and make progress with digital transformation. We recognise there's a lot of variation across councils on where they are in terms of the journey, and there's also no common measures, and very much again echoing what Jenny said around whilst there's the digital maturity, it's very much a kind of individual kind of journey. So with that in mind, and it is the first report on councils, we thought it would be most helpful to have a more supporting improvement piece and provide an overview of where councils are in terms of digital progress. And that very much shaped the methodology that we used. It was a case study approach. We carried out detailed field work in 6 councils and more wider kind of national consultation with different stakeholders. So from the outset, the audit, it wasn't about ranking or benchmarking councils against each other in terms of digital maturity. To support improvement, we aim to set out the characteristics of a digital council. We also aim to outline how well councils are putting in place the building blocks needed, and in particular, again, like Jenny's just done, it's highlighting those areas where we can see that there are good examples across the sector and much more embedded practice, and those areas where there is still quite a lot of work to do. And we've provided examples both within the report and also on our eHub that illustrate that good practice that can be shared across councils. And we also wanted to highlight the kind of common barriers that councils face. The report also set out how the pandemic impacted on digital transformation and what can be learned from that. And we've made, a number of recommendations to councils and developed additional resources that we'll talk about. So, given the whole improvement agenda, the report was very much aimed at leadership teams within councils and elected members, and we hope that it provides a kind of useful tool to support them. Firstly, we set out the characteristics of a digital council and the kind of capacities that council should be looking to develop, and it's very much about delivering better outcomes for citizens, making best use of resources that the councils have, and that includes people and technology. And for that to happen, there needs to be digital leadership, there needs to be user-focused practice, a digital workforce, a collaborative culture, the right technology, and ability to use data well, and also a culture that supports innovation. So I'm going to hand over to my colleague Lucy now, just to go through the findings on each of these.
Thanks, Bernie. So yes, I'm going to outline the main findings and talk a bit about what we saw when things were going well and some of the challenges. So to start with digital leadership, this is about how those at the top of the organisation are driving the digital agenda. We found that those councils further ahead have a digital vision and strategy that's focused on improving outcomes for citizens. They have a strategy that goes beyond IT and infrastructure to focus on people and transforming services. It's aligned with wider council priorities, and alongside this, we'd expect to see plans detailing actions, timescales, and resource requirements. We found that digital strategies are most effective when leaders drive the digital vision, and that is that the leadership teams champion the benefits of digital change and have sustained staff engagement across the organisation to get people on board and to create that collaborative digital culture. Digital leadership also means that leaders need to have the right level of digital awareness, expertise, and skills to understand both the opportunities and risks. And that includes elected members, and we found that their involvement wasn't really well developed at all. There is training available. For example, the Digital Office and Improvement Service have run training for elected members before, and it's important that elected members take the opportunity to develop their skills and knowledge to be able to champion the benefits of digital, but also scrutinise the progress of digital programmes. As councils become more digitally mature, there also needs to be an evolving approach to governance to get the right scrutiny in place. And leaders need to be mindful of investment needs to create a digital council fit for the future. Digital transformation needs clear investment plans, not only in the technology, but also in people and skills to maximise its potential. Moving on to user focus. This is obviously about councils understanding the needs of their users, both citizens and staff, and involving them in service design. This is probably one of the most underdeveloped areas we found. We found that while user involvement in principle is central to digital service redesign, in practice it was quite limited. There is increasing involvement of staff in digital transformation projects, and that is resulting in more effective digital solutions. However, involvement of citizens and service users and communities is more limited. As Jenny highlighted, approaches such as the Scottish approach to service design or consideration of things like the Digital Service Scotland standard is limited. We recognise that this is a challenge, and much of this comes down to having the staff capacity and skills. As well as involving users, councils need to improve how they monitor outcomes. For example, developing a benefits realisation framework that monitors progress and outcomes more broadly than financial benefits. And crucially, as services are shifting online and more digital methods are adopted, then there's a need to ensure no one is left behind and digital exclusion is addressed. That means having a better understanding of the needs of those experiencing digital exclusion and putting a strategy in place to address it. Digital workforce is about having the skills and confidence to work in different ways. The audit found that insufficient staff capacity and digital skills are the most significant barriers to digital progress across councils. There are not enough staff with the required digital skills, and there are skills gaps at all levels, leadership within digital and IT teams and across the wider workforce. And these are different, obviously, in different councils in different ways. Councils need to improve their workforce planning. We found that councils need a better understanding of the digital skills they have, the skills they need, and how those needs may change in the future. This could be through undertaking digital skills surveys, developing competency frameworks, and preparing workforce plans that align with their digital transformation plans. However, there are a range of digital skills initiatives that councils are putting in place, such as the Digital Champions Programme, dedicated learning activities, and again, getting these aligned with the skills gaps identified is important to build capacity. We also encountered councils working with business partners to accelerate digital transformation, filling skills gaps and providing additional capacity. But it's really important that councils still have their own internal expertise to drive their digital strategies and visions. The next characteristic is about being collaborative, and this comes in many forms. There needs to be more collaboration within councils in terms of sharing learning, ideas, digital solutions, and also in terms of joint working to deliver better coordinated services and that move away from siloed working. We've seen some good collaboration between councils. The establishment of the digital office has helped to facilitate shared learning and practice. All councils are signed up to this, and to get the best out of it, all councils have a role to play in actively participating in it. We know that there are barriers to jointly procuring and sharing systems, and there needs to be greater collaboration across local government at a senior level to identify opportunities for more shared or common approaches. Collaboration with partners on a local or regional basis is important, both in terms of taking a more collaborative approach to providing services for communities, but also in terms of accessing support, learning and innovations from partners in other sectors. The refreshed joint national strategy between COSLA and the Scottish Government is due to be published this month, I think. And it provides an opportunity to set out the shared vision and priorities across local government and identify areas for collaboration. We've talked a lot about people so far, but good IT foundations are essential. Councils typically have a large number of legacy systems that aren't integrated and can pose risks. An important step in digital maturity is for councils to simplify their technical architecture. This could involve more joined up and cloud-based systems, replacing legacy systems and reusing common solutions where appropriate. All this will help councils to make better use of the data they have. There is an increased focus on how data can help inform decisions, understand needs and achieve better outcomes. More digitally mature councils have incorporated this focus into their digital strategies. And to support this, councils need to ensure effective data governance frameworks are in place. This is an area where there is some activity at national level and one for councils to look out for. Being innovative is the final characteristic of our digital council, and councils are at probably quite an early stage in developing the culture needed to support digital change. Leadership have a key role in setting the tone and creating an innovative culture that gives staff the space and time to explore new digital solutions, including being able to take calculated risks through more agile approaches. Councils are beginning to use different approaches such as agile, open innovation and service design to support digital innovation, but a shortage of skills is a challenge. It just so happened that when we were halfway through our audits, COVID hit, and so last summer we took the opportunity to speak to our councils again to get an understanding of the role digital had played in their responses to the pandemic. It was clear as a result that there were many positives that had come out of it, including it had helped develop digital leadership and move the digital transformation agenda up in council's agenda, increased the focus on service users and the awareness of the risks of digital exclusion. It changed how and where people work, and councils adapted well to support their workforce. It brought much greater collaboration across sectors as priorities and goals aligned. It demonstrated the importance of data and understanding needs and also sharing data. And it encouraged a culture of innovation that councils need to further develop as they move into a phase of renewal. So just to quickly run through some of the recommendations, we issued a number of these on the back of the findings. And they're very much aligned to what Jenny has already said, really. We saw that COVID was a significant catalyst and has allowed lots of things to be put in place quickly. Councils need to take stock of where they are, assess progress, and learn lessons, including addressing barriers such as digital exclusion. Council should have a clear digital vision that sets out how they will deliver better outcomes. That needs to be including detailed plans alongside investment plans. Councils need to better understand the needs of their citizens in terms of how they access and use services and have the skills in place to carry out service design. Also need to develop the approach to monitoring outcomes. Councils need to undertake a staff skills survey to better understand digital skills they have and have detailed workforce and development plans that align to digital transformation plans. Councils need to understand their tech infrastructure and have a plan to address legacy systems. They should work with the Digital Office and Scottish Government on common data standards and data ethics. And at a national level, stakeholders need to agree on and articulate the roles, identifying where a shared approach would be of benefit. And just to round up, to flag some of the resources that we have, as I mentioned, one of the aims of the report was to support improvement. And so we have things like a good practice guide, which is based on the characteristics and outlines what we'd expect to see in a digital council alongside some illustrative examples. We also have a checklist for elected members to help them scrutinise. And there's further resources on the eHub like case studies. And I'll stop there. We are also very happy to take questions. Thank you. I'll stop presenting now.
Thanks, Lucy. I think some of the resources that you've talked about there, particularly, we've already seen that councils are seeing a massive impact in being able to have those. So I think they're really welcome across local government. Definitely, we've seen, particularly like the elected member checklist, that's been really popular and already been put into practice. So thank you so much for all your recommendations, but also the tools that you've given councils and also the digital office to be able to share as well. So thank you very much. We're happy to take questions. I think we've got maybe five or so minutes. We can take questions if anybody's got any. Just jump in. We're trying to keep it informal. I think we're going to get off quite lightly here, ladies.
Yeah, thank you. That was really very informative. I'm Pam Hunter. I'm head of data acquisition for the Scottish Government. Well, I'm quite keen to work with Digital Office, and I've already been having some early conversations with Colin about how we can start looking at reducing the burden of data collection coming into the Scottish Government, which I know can be quite substantial. So I found this very, very helpful today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I think we're trying to strengthen as many partnerships as we possibly can, because we recognise, I think Audit Scotland pointed it out, and it's something that comes up in our own maturity assessments, that resources are limited for digital transformation. So we need to think about how we can pool the resources and get the best out of them, as well as upskilling. So anything that we can do to work together, Pamela, would be great. And particularly around things like data maturity, data standards, and tying that into other models is key for us as well. Ian has asked in the chat just about procuring information, the role of procurement for the digital office. So Scotland Excel is part of the digital partnership, and that's the role that we have up in Scotland for procurement and for centralised procurement for local government. So Scotland Excel are the key organisation for procurement here, and the digital office, it's part of the wider digital partnership with Scottish Government, councils and others up here. And in terms of being able to engage with the digital maturity assessments, all local authorities up here are able to do that free of charge. It's a service that we offer as part of the digital office to the partnership and the 32 councils up here. And I think we are sharing best practice with others down south and in Wales, and just how we approach that for our organisations here. I hope that answers that, Ian. So Sean's asked, regarding the digital maturity model, this seems like a little dated and IT focus. Have organisations like Nesta and Public Digital been consulted? So the digital maturity model, it might appear like it's quite IT focused, but it's absolutely not IT focused at all. That's maybe my explanation of it. It's focused on people and culture. It doesn't focus on technologies or technologies that are being used. It's about capacity. So the people that we speak to are across the whole organisation, and it is around their understanding of how to put into practice innovation and research, or amongst other things. We use organisations like Nesta and other public digital organisations. We don't consult with them in order to develop the digital maturity model, but we use them as partners to understand and research ourselves. So yeah, I probably did seem like it was very IT focused, but it isn't at all. It's very much people focused. It's about the skills of the workforce, leadership of the workforce, and how that gives capacity for change, all change across the broadest digital spectrum, not just IT. And actually, it's a good point, because when we started, so we've been doing the maturity assessments for 4 years now, and when we started doing it, it was very much IT departments that would come to us and say, oh, we're really interested in this. It's now heads of HR and people, heads of people that come and ask for it, because it is around, I think Audit Scotland have pointed out in their report as well, that it's skills of the workforce that's one of the key areas that we need to focus on, along with citizen design. So we're definitely seeing a sort of shift, that it's less IT and more people, managers that are coming and asking for advice on maturity.
Yeah, Jenny, just to echo that, absolutely. I think seeing that being a digital council, it's very much about people as much as kind of the tech side of things, and in that kind of digital culture, it needs to be there right across the organisation and engage everyone. And certainly that's been the kind of focus and the kind of tools that we've came up with, but we can see that as well in the digital maturity assessment, and we hope they complement them well. I have added my own email address just to the chat, but just we have spoken. I think Jenny said that some councils have used the elected member checklist, and so on, and we've spoken to a couple of councils, audit committees or committees, and if there's anyone there from a council that would find that helpful, please get in touch.
That's really helpful, Bernie. Definitely. And I think I know from speaking to councils, there are definitely councils that would like to make use of that. So we can chat about that after the session as well. Should you make the assessment mandatory? So we've not actually mandated the assessment, and actually I didn't mention that when I was presenting. So we've never said that you have to undergo this kind of assessment. What we do see is that it is best practice, and the councils that we've revisited who have potentially maybe 3 years down the line from having completed the maturity assessment, when we retake it, they're further forward again than those who maybe haven't assessed where they are in terms of their digital maturity. So we haven't mandated it. We do strongly recommend it. Audit Scotland have also picked it up as part of their report that it's good practice to have that. Not necessarily the digital office is one, although they do recognise that that is good practice. But you know, some sort of baseline is necessary to understand where you are in terms of your digital journey. But we're lucky up here in Scotland, 21 of the 32 councils have undertaken it, so we are already close to 75% of people having gone through the assessment. So we strongly recommend it. It's probably the best way to say it, but we don't tend to try and mandate too much up here if we don't need to. Thanks, everyone. Obviously, get in touch with myself or Bernie if you would like to talk about either of our reports in any great detail, or indeed how to take forward some of the actions that we've talked about in terms of recommendations. And yeah, thanks everyone for joining us this morning. That's great.
Thank you. Very
Thank you.
enjoyable. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jenny. Thank you.
No, thank you. Take care all.